In this video, we're going to see how to make our own oil paints. In particular, we're going to mix two different pigments with the same medium. In this case, we're going to use some linseed oil. This is to complete our discussion on the oils before we start to see how to use them. As we already seen, and I can't stress this concept too much, pigments can be very dangerous. And if you're not expert and you never handled oil paints before, my suggestion is to only use paints ready that we can buy in tubes like these. But since here we're gonna use them, I think it's a good idea as first step to point out some basic safety equipment that we must have and use in order to do our job in a safe way. As we have seen, pigments are colored dusts, and as well as all the other dust, they can fly. This means that no matter what pigment we are using, there is a serious risk for us to inhale it or that it gets in contact with our eyes. To prevent this, it's really important that we use a professional dust-proof mask and glasses like those used in the chemical labs. It's also possible while we work it that the pigments flying gets on our hair or on our clothes, and in this case there is the chance that we inhale it later when we have finished our job and we will take our mask and glasses off. For this reason, it's better if we wear a lab coat and a dustproof cap. Remember to take your mask and glasses off after you have removed the lab coat and cap. Some pigments can also be very dangerous if it gets in contact with our skin, so it's also a good habit to use protective gloves. Now that we know more about the protective gear that we need to handle our pigments safely, let's see the rest of the things that we are going to use to make our oil paint. Although we can work on any rigid surface such as wooden or metal panels, I think the best base to work on and do our job is a glass plate. That's what we're going to use here. We're gonna need some spatulas to mix our components and handle them easily. We need a spoon to move the pigment. It's better if from now on we will only use it for this job. Of course, we need the pigment and the medium. In this case, we're going to use these two pigments and some linseed oil. Eventually, we may need an empty tube where we can put our paint later when we have finished our job, in case we are not going to use it immediately. Pigments should be kept in a safe place out of our normal environment. I like to keep mine inside a jar. As first step, we're going to use the spoon to take the pigment out and put it on our glass plate. We don't want to waste it, so we will only take the quantity that we need out and leave the rest inside the jar. The next step is to pour some medium out. We will just need a small quantity per time, trying to avoid spilling directly on top of the pigment. We really want to avoid spilling it right on top of it. I like to make a small circle with the medium around the pigment first, and then pour a small quantity beside of it. It's time to start mixing them. Using one of our spatulas, we're gonna start moving gently the medium inside the pigment. And we keep doing this until there is no more pigment free to fly. And if the mixture we just made is too thick, we can add some extra medium. On the other side, if the blend is too thin, we can add some extra pigment. When we reach the right consistency, we can start working it. This means that with our spatula we're gonna keep pressing the paint against the glass plate and we'll keep working it until it becomes uniform. Now that our paint has reached the right consistency and it's nice and uniform, we can move it on our palette and use it immediately, or if we have an empty tube, we can store it inside of it and use it in a second time. Now we're going to change the pigment. I want to show you what happens when we do the same thing with this metallic blue we have got here. So once again, we're going to use our spoon to move some pigment on the glass plate. Then we're going to pour some medium down beside of it. And slowly we're going to start mixing them. And as we did before, we're going to keep pressing the pigment against the glass plate until the paint is ready. Now that we have finished preparing also this second color and it's ready to be used, let's see if there is any difference between this paint and the one we did before. Of course, the first thing that we notice is that they have different colors. But this is not really what we are looking for. In fact, this is actually why we bought them. What we are looking for is to see if there is any difference in the mixtures. The first is nice and homogeneous, while the second is a kind of lumpy. This happened because the first has the grains really small, and it's an apolar pigment which works really well with our linseed oil, which is an apolar medium. The second pigment has the grains a little bit thicker. It's a pigment produced to make mainly acrylic colors, and this means that it works really well with polar mediums, but not so well with the mediums we are using. And with this last consideration, we have concluded our demonstration on how to make oil paints. If you enjoyed this video, we will really appreciate if you could click on like and subscribe to our channel. It will also help us very much if you could leave a comment. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one.